You meet someone and everything just clicks. The conversation flows effortlessly. The chemistry feels electric. They text you good morning. They ask thoughtful questions. They make you feel seen in a way you haven't felt in a long time. And for a moment, you think, maybe this is finally it. But then something strange starts happening. Their replies get slower. Plans become less certain. The emotional depth that once felt natural suddenly disappears. You start wondering if you said something wrong. You replay conversations in your head. You question whether you are being too needy or expecting too much. But what if the problem isn't you at all? What if the person you're dating is emotionally unavailable? And here's the tricky part. Emotionally unavailable people don't always look distant in the beginning. In fact, many of them can seem incredibly charming, attentive, and engaging at first. But when the relationship starts requiring real emotional presence, something shifts. Today we are going to talk about 7 powerful signs that you might be dating someone who is emotionally unavailable. And more importantly, why your brain can become so attached to people who can't truly meet you emotionally. Because once you understand the psychology behind it, a lot of confusing relationship patterns suddenly start making sense. Let's start with something most people experience in modern dating but rarely talk about openly. We live in a time where meeting new people has never been easier. Dating apps can introduce you to dozens of potential partners within minutes. But strangely enough, emotional connection has become harder to find. Why? Because many people today are dealing with emotional burnout, past heartbreak, or simply a fear of vulnerability. Psychologists often describe this through something called attachment styles. One of the most common patterns in modern dating is called avoidant attachment. People with an avoidant attachment style often crave connection on the surface. They enjoy attention. They enjoy companionship. They enjoy the excitement of something new. But deep emotional intimacy makes them uncomfortable. So when a relationship starts becoming real, they instinctively pull away to protect themselves. And if you've ever been on the receiving end of that behavior, it can feel incredibly confusing. Because in the beginning, nothing seemed wrong. So let's talk about the first sign. Emotionally unavailable people often avoid emotional conversations. You might notice that every time a conversation starts getting deeper, they redirect it. If you try to talk about feelings, they might joke about it. Or they might change the topic. Or they might say something like, let's not make things complicated. At first, it may seem harmless. But over time you realize that the relationship stays stuck on the surface. You know their favorite movies. You know what restaurants they like. But you don't really know their fears, their insecurities, or their emotional world. And emotional intimacy can't grow without those conversations. Now let's talk about the second sign, which is one of the most psychologically powerful dynamics in relationships. Hot and cold behavior. One week they're incredibly affectionate. They text constantly. They plan dates. They make you feel important. And just when you start feeling safe and connected, they disappear emotionally. Messages become short. Plans become uncertain. Their energy feels distant. Then suddenly, they come back again with warmth and attention. This pattern creates something psychologists call intermittent reinforcement. It's the same psychological mechanism used in casinos and slot machines. When rewards are unpredictable, the brain becomes even more attached. Your mind starts chasing the moments when they're warm again. And without realizing it, you become emotionally invested in trying to bring back the version of them that felt so good in the beginning. Now let's move to the third sign. Their life feels like a closed door. You might date them for weeks or even months, but somehow you never really enter their world. You rarely meet their friends. You never hear about their family. They don't invite you into their routines or personal life. Everything happens in a small, controlled bubble. Dinner dates, late night texts, occasional hangouts. But you're never fully integrated into their life. And a healthy relationship naturally expands into shared environments. When someone keeps emotional distance, they often keep structural distance too. Now let me tell you a story that might sound familiar. Emily met Jake on a dating app. At first, everything felt almost perfect. Jake was charming. He listened carefully. He made Emily laugh in ways that made her feel relaxed and understood. Their first few weeks together were full of long conversations, spontaneous dates, and constant texting. Emily told her friends she felt like she had finally met someone emotionally mature. But slowly, subtle changes started appearing. Jake stopped initiating plans as often. His replies became shorter. Sometimes he would disappear for a day or two without explanation. When Emily asked if everything was okay, Jake would say things like, "I've just been busy." But something felt different. Whenever Emily tried to talk about the relationship or where things were going, Jake became uncomfortable. He would say things like, "Let's just enjoy the moment." Or, why put labels on things? Emily started questioning herself. Was she expecting too much? Was she moving too fast? But deep down, what she was really feeling was emotional inconsistency. And that leads us to the fourth sign. Emotionally unavailable people struggle with vulnerability. They rarely talk about their fears. They rarely share emotional pain. They keep conversations in safe territory. You might notice that even after spending a lot of time together, you still feel like there's a wall between you. Real vulnerability requires emotional openness. But people who fear intimacy often avoid revealing their inner world. Not because they're bad people, but because vulnerability makes them feel exposed. Now the fifth sign is something that shows up a lot in modern dating culture. They label everything as casual. Even after months of spending time together, they resist defining the relationship. You might hear phrases like, "Let's not rush things," or "I'm not really looking for anything serious right now." And sometimes those statements are honest. But sometimes they're a way of maintaining emotional distance while still enjoying the benefits of companionship. And that ambiguity can slowly drain the person who wants deeper connection. Now let's talk about the sixth sign. How they respond to conflict. Every relationship has disagreements. Healthy couples talk through problems. They communicate. They repair misunderstandings. But emotionally unavailable people often avoid emotional conflict altogether. Instead of discussing problems, they disappear. They stop replying. They withdraw emotionally. They create silence instead of resolution. This behavior can feel incredibly destabilizing for the other person, because unresolved conflict leaves emotional tension hanging in the air. And finally, the seventh sign. You feel lonely even when you are together. This is one of the most powerful emotional signals your intuition can give you. You might spend time together physically. You might go on dates. You might talk regularly. But something still feels missing. Real emotional presence. A relationship without emotional presence can feel surprisingly lonely. Because intimacy isn't just about proximity. It's about emotional availability. Now here's something important to understand. Most emotionally unavailable people aren't trying to hurt anyone. In many cases, they're protecting themselves from emotional pain they experienced in the past. Avoidant attachment often develops from childhood experiences where emotional needs weren't consistently met. So the brain learns a survival strategy. Stay independent. Avoid vulnerability. Keep emotional distance. That strategy may have protected them once. But in adult relationships, it often creates confusing and painful dynamics. And if you're someone who values emotional connection, you may find yourself repeatedly drawn to these types of partners without understanding why. Sometimes it's because emotionally unavailable people can initially appear confident, independent, and intriguing. Those qualities can feel very attractive. But long-term relationships require something deeper. Consistency, communication, emotional presence. And here's the hardest truth for many people to accept. You cannot love someone into emotional availability. No amount of patience, understanding, or effort can force someone to open emotionally if they're not ready to do that work themselves. The healthiest relationships happen when two people are both willing to show up emotionally. When vulnerability is mutual. When communication feels safe. When connection grows instead of shrinking over time. So if you've ever found yourself feeling confused in a relationship, if you've ever wondered why someone who once seemed so interested slowly became distant, it might not mean you were asking for too much. It might simply mean the other person wasn't emotionally available. And recognizing that truth can save you months or even years of emotional confusion. Because the right relationship won't make you feel like you're constantly chasing emotional closeness. It will feel steady, open, and safe. If this conversation resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on your own experiences. Have you ever dated someone emotionally unavailable? Or maybe you recognized some of these patterns in a past relationship. If you did, you're definitely not alone. So if this video helped you understand something about your own relationship experiences, go ahead and like the video. It helps more people discover these conversations about psychology and relationships. And I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Share your experience in the comments. What was the biggest sign that someone in your life was emotionally unavailable? Your story might help someone else feel less confused or alone. And if you enjoy these deep dives into the psychology behind love, dating, and human behavior, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We release new insights regularly to help you better understand relationships and emotional connection. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss the next episode. Because sometimes the smallest psychological insight can completely change the way you see your relationships.